It is time for our weekly Kirk Cousins update as Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer provided Falcons fans some new information going into the NFL draft on number 18. So here's what Breer wrote. So where could Cousins go? I think Cleveland is a lot less likely now, but not completely impossible. The other team I'd pay attention to is the Pittsburgh Steelers if Aaron Rodgers decides not to go there. So let's talk about the Steelers potentially pursuing Cousins if Rodgers decides to not sign with Pittsburgh, despite all indications pointing to him doing so. This would be, I think, good news for Atlanta if Rodgers does not go to Pittsburgh, because it would create a quarterback vacancy and a team could become desperate for Cousins and give the Falcons a good draft pick or take that salary off their books. But I've got a few theories I want to share on this subject. Theory number one. When it comes to Aaron Rodgers and why he has not signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he enjoys the spotlight. He enjoys being the center of attention. He likes going on his buddy Pat McAfee show. He enjoys being in the headlines when it's under his control, right? When people are talking about him and he doesn't have a say in it, meaning he doesn't have the opportunity to end or squash the narrative, like when it was his toe during COVID, he got pretty upset. But when it's about him and what his future holds, he can drag it out as long as he wants and just keep a hung jury waiting for him. So that's the first theory as to why Rodgers has not signed yet. He likes being the center of attention, and as long as he is a free agent, people are like me are going to continue to talk about him. Theory number two, he is waiting to see the NFL draft results. Might want to see if the Steelers draft a quarterback, which at 41 years old, he shouldn't expect to be signing with a team that views him as their starting quarterback for the next 3 to 4 seasons. So I don't know why he'd be so butthurt if he went to Pittsburgh today and then they drafted Shedeur Sanders in round 1. That wouldn't be like whoa, how could you? The ball's on you guys to draft a quarterback. Dude, you're 41 years old. 41, 42, you should not expect to be with this team for very long. But he could have this sense of ego that if you have me, why would you want to draft a quarterback? That makes no sense in my brain. So that's a possibility, all right? Theory number 3. He is waiting for the Minnesota Vikings to call and complete the Brett Favre circle of life in the NFL. I think that he could be waiting on this because he feels that Minnesota, well, it is a eerily, similar, identical career path as Favre. I don't think he's doing it to just follow in Favre's footsteps, but it could be an opportunity that he looks at as twofold. One, an opportunity to play the Packers twice and beat his old team, and a team that he's kind of grumpy at because they replaced him when he was coming off an MVP kind of season or going into an MVP season. 2, he feels that Minnesota is in a much better spot to win, and he is looking to get one more ring before he hangs it up, and hanging out with Jordan Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, and that Vikings defense and a team that won a ton of games last year is going to give him a much better opportunity than a Steelers team that's just been barely getting above 500 and squeaking into the playoffs without any kind of playoff success, really for the last decade, believe it or not. So this theory to me seems a little bit more likely. And then theory number 4 is he just wants to retire, and for whatever reason he expressed some level of interest in playing when deep down he doesn't want to play, but that one just seems ridiculous. Like, if you wanted to retire, why go through this whole charade of meeting with the Steelers and going on a private tour with, Mike Tomlin, Rooney, the GM, all that stuff. So I like theory number 3 the most. He is waiting for the Vikings to either decide we're not going to put all of our faith in J.J. McCarthy just yet, or J.J. McCarthy's not rehabbing as well as we would have liked, so we do need to bring in another quarterback as an insurance policy, and Rodgers turns out to be the better quarterback anyway this year, so we can have J.J. sit for a second season, which today would sound insane, but keep in mind, Rodgers sat for 2.5 years, so it wasn't that long ago. This was the norm for a lot of quarterbacks. But the big question that the Falcons need to answer, or we need to really answer, is does Atlanta really want Kirk Cousins? They want Kirk Cousins to be their backup, or have they been bluffing this whole time? Because credit to them, they have done an amazing job of letting everyone know they are comfortable with keeping Kirk as the backup. And if that's the truth, then it's not that difficult of a job or facade to keep up. But if they are trying to give this image off so that a team has to overpay for Cousins because they know Atlanta wants to keep Kirk, so they have to pry Cousins outside of ATL, then I think the Falcons are waiting for a team like the Steelers to come calling. And this is where I really want to do a deeper dive on, because Albert Breer added this as well. And it's not like there isn't some level of risk for the Falcons in handling things like this. If they hold on to Cousins into the summer with the idea of trading him, he could decide, with his family now rooted in Atlanta, that he'd be less willing to leave in a camp emergency situation than he might be in the spring. That would be bad news for the Falcons if, deep down, they want to trade Kirk Cousins. If they are banking on a situation like Pittsburgh developing where Rodgers decides he's going to retire and the Steelers beg for Kirk Cousins, if that situation doesn't happen and they go into training camp and they're like, crap, we thought that one team would be desperate enough to give us a pick for him. Turns out that didn't happen. The Browns didn't want to reach our asking price. They were comfortable with Joe Flacco. Rodgers picked Pittsburgh in the end. And now we have Kirk, and we don't really want Cousins on our roster because we want a backup who wants to be a backup, not a backup who met with the owner and got 5 pages of notes out of Arthur Blank on why he wants to be a starter elsewhere. We don't want that situation on our roster, so we are now banking on a training camp injury. And even if they were to get one, as Albert Breer points out, what's stopping Kirk Cousins from going, nope, you know what? I've got my no trade clause. I don't want to get traded to that situation. I don't really want to have to go to a new team a week before the season starts, pick up a brand new playbook, try and cram it into my brain. I don't think this is a good situation for me to be successful. So I'm not going to waive my no trade clause. I'm going to stay put, and you guys can pay me to be the most expensive backup ever, or you can just tell me to stay at home, and I'll rehab for an extra year, and I'll be ready to start again in 2026. And at that point, the Falcons are going to have a lot of, shit to pick off the ceiling because they held on to him for an extra $10 million when they could have released him and saved Arthur Blank $10 million. And the gamble of a team calling to trade for him didn't pay off. And at the end of the day, they're only robbed of really 2 things. One, $10 million, which to you and I is a ton, but to them it may not be anything. It's not like it counts against the salary cap. It's just Arthur Blank writing a $10 million check. And 2, it robbed them of the opportunity to find a better backup earlier. Because now if they decide or they'll learn in August, hey, Cousins is not going to veto his no-trade clause, so we're just going to tell him to stay at home this season because we don't want him actually in the building for the year. And in mid-August, we have to find a new backup quarterback. Man, I wish we knew this information back in March when we could have gotten a better backup quarterback or drafted a quarterback that we liked more than the 5 guys we selected anyway. Those would be the 2 negative results of this entire charade blowing up in the Falcons' face. So for, the 10th time, will Kirk Cousins be a Falcon week 1? I continue to believe no, and I can continue to be wrong on this, but I just don't see why the Falcons would want to bring this situation into their locker room. I've yet to see anything that indicates Cousins would be a happy backup. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think you should have a disgruntled employee sitting behind your starting quarterback. Now, next up on the show, if that first half seemed a little doom and gloom, I do have some news that I think you guys will get a good kick out of and you'll really like, and it has nothing to do with Kirk Cousins. So stick around for that. But first things first, quick shout out to Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. So if you want to go to a Braves game or you want to go see any other sporting event in your area, check out Game Time today. Get last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to talk about a different NFC South team. Let's talk about the Saints, because the Derek Carr situation is quite strange. And if you just take it surface level, it doesn't seem too out of the ordinary. But if you just do a little bit of digging, which I took the liberty of doing for you, I think you'll come to the same conclusion that I did, which is this is kind of peculiar. Let me give you the timeline here. So let's go back to day one, which is Derek Carr joins the New Orleans Saints and most importantly joins Dennis Allen, who used to be his coach in Oakland with the Raiders. He signs that 4-year, $150 million contract. So the beginning of Derek Carr's career with the Saints was going pretty well until he suffered a shoulder injury in 2023. He played through it, but he did miss a good chunk of 2024. He had a hand injury, he had a concussion. So through 2 years in New Orleans, he has been through a lot when it comes to his health. Now, this offseason, he had his contract restructured. Really quickly, contract restructures for dummies. 97% of restructures are done without the player's permission. All it means is they are taking the player's base salary, they are lowering it down to the minimum, and whatever excess base salary they took off, say $10 million, they then prorate that over the remaining years on their contract. So if there are 5 years remaining on their contract, you do 10 divided by 5, and you put $2 million in signing bonuses for all those years. So you are lowering their cap hit for 1 year while raising future cap hits. It's what the Saints have to do every single year to give them the best spending ability in that offseason, while also making it difficult the next offseason. But the gamble pays off if you are like the Eagles, who operate under the same way, and you win a Super Bowl. So, fortunately for New Orleans, well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for them, it has not paid off. But when they restructured that contract, getting back to where I was, it lowered his cap hit for this year, but raised his cap hit for the next year and the year after that, making it much more difficult for New Orleans to move on from him in the future, but also just locking him in for this year. You just gave him a huge signing bonus for 2024 or 2025. So when they made that move, it put Derek Carr almost in stone in New Orleans for this year. And that was a move they could make without his permission. And I wonder if after dumping Dennis Allen and bringing in Kellen Moore, Derek Carr wanted a change of scenery. He wanted to go somewhere else. He didn't feel like it was a good fit in New Orleans through 2 years. And all of a sudden, the Saints just said, you're not going anywhere. We just restructured your contract. Now you're stuck here. And so then Derek Carr played the only card he could play, the injury card, and said, you know what? I don't want to be here. So here's what I'm going to do. And this is just a theory. I'm going to exaggerate my shoulder injury. Going back to 2023. And you guys are not going to have me for this year. And I'm going to get paid. And this is all because I don't want to be here to begin with. It sounds a little far-fetched. But the shoulder injury popping up somewhat out of the blue is strange. Right? And if that were to happen, man, I mean, people are making fun of like the Falcons quarterback situation right here, but the Saints quarterback situation, I mean, would be much, much worse. You got Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner. I don't know what you would do if you're in New Orleans. You'd be in a tough spot. You turn to the draft and you try and, like, let's just say they at 9 want to reach on a quarterback. I've heard a lot of smoke between Jackson Dart and New Orleans. At that stage, you take Dart or you take Shedeur Sanders, and I think everyone would deem it as a reach. And here's where it would really blow up in their face. They already have a lot of roster holes at the moment. So if they reach on a quarterback like Shedeur and Dart, and it doesn't work out with that quarterback, man, it feels like they shot themselves in the left foot and in the right foot. Because now they're still searching for a quarterback, and they just lit a top 10 draft pick on fire that could have been a huge asset in filling out a different roster need of theirs, which they have plenty of right now. So if all goes well for the rest of the NFC South here, if Derek Carr misses this year, or this threat of this injury forces New Orleans to make a panic pick at 9 and reach at a quarterback, by 2026, it really could be, tanking for Arch Manning. And who knows if he even enters the draft in 2026. I think the plan was for him to start 2 years at Texas and do 4 seasons altogether in Austin. So this could be an absolute disaster season for New Orleans in 2025, where they don't properly use a top 10 draft pick. They are still looking for their franchise quarterback. And while they've been getting all their jokes off on Kirk Cousins' contract, Derek Carr is not looking too much better right now at the moment anyway. So let me know, to wrap up the video, who is going to win the NFC South in 2025? Someone going to beat the Bucs streak at the top of the division like Atlanta? Or is it going to be like a dark horse like Carolina? I'll tell you who I'm picking to finish last, the New Orleans Saints. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in a few short hours. I should have mentioned this earlier at the top of the video, but we are going to have a company-wide Chat Sports 3-round mock draft where I'll be making the selections for Atlanta. So if you want to be a part of that mock draft, hang out with us starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll see you guys then. Until then, enjoy the rest of your, Thursday morning.